So I'm going to do a little bit of mask edge cleanup on the body itself. That's not going to take very long, and then we're going to move into some cool creative stuff. So as you can see, there are some halos, some edges in here that we need to fix. There's a little bit of weirdness on the lip right there. I'm going to burn that and dodge that. And the rest of this I'm going to deal with on the blur tool. First I'm going to get the softness of the edge accurate. Then since it's all going to be out of focus, I can move that edge with my lovely smudge tool. Smudge tool is also one of those tools that I only think of as a mask adjustment tool. Use this on pixels if I'm working on hair strands like I was earlier. But that still to me is making adjustments for a mask. If you don't want to use the blur tool, you can just use the smudge tool to soften the edge. It's got good control. And if you find that you maybe went too far, you can quickly bring that back with sharpen. Tighten up the edge a little bit right there. That's it. That's all the masking I'm doing today, and that was plenty. So next I'm going to start messing around with the colors, the background and the model. Gonna create a new folder for my color. Inside, and ditch that medium gray. Let's tidy up our layers a bit. Okay, everything in here looks good. BG. Okay, so let's start crafting this story a bit more. I'm gonna do a bit of, this is kind of a blunt force instrument, but I'm just gonna crank up a little bit of saturation to not too much so that I'm losing information. Be careful about that. That's the problem with hue saturation. It just does it kind of across the board. But I'm just going to do some really quick down and dirty color work because we're doing some expressive color stuff. We don't need to be ultra precise here. This is more like fine art color work, which is fun because it's loose and expressive and you can do whatever you want. Now remember, I always keep color above luminosity. And if you need to keep that straight for yourself, this is sometimes helpful. For me, color, my color folder contains both color and luminosity moves, but a lot of people like to keep it straight like this, and this might help you. Keep your lum moves under your color moves. If you keep them in separate folders, that way, you know, you never mix them up. I'm looking at the front of the hair right now. I want to get a little bit more drama in there. sometimes you may notice this, but it's hard to tell if it's the tablet or if it's Photoshop is getting a little low on resources, but sometimes curve points will just stick to your cursor. It's kind of a pain, but that's what that was. You know, this background is really throwing me off because I haven't done a whole lot to craft it yet. I know I don't want it to look like this. I want it to look more like a green glow rather than just a graphical kind of color. So I'm going to craft this. And this is a little too straight complementary, I feel like. I'm gonna, you know, because I was basically playing this color off of what I found within the model's native lighting situation. These, you know, it's kind of teal, turquoise, and something closer to the red hue, although I was not sure if that becomes too much of a direct compliment, I feel like. And that's just weird. But I like this pastel-y kind of magenta. I'm gonna see if I can take some of the, take some of the purple from in here. Maybe more in that range. And a little bit richer. This would just be a little accent. Now, I'm totally just messing around with color right now. I've got no brief on this. I'm just messing with some gradients. A, because I want to make a really bright color environment, because that's just what I feel like doing right now. But in addition to that, I have a trick, a bonus trick to show you about how to deal with bands and gradients, because I'm working in 8-bit right now. So this is a cool trick. It's really easy. As you know, if you've ever worked with gradient backgrounds, building them yourself by painting into solid color fills or just painting on pixels, bands always show up. And I know how to get rid of those in 2 seconds. So, and I'm going to give you the tool too. So. Let's see if bringing a little bit of grain. Notice this is an interesting color theory issue here. I'm painting on my, you know, mint green over this pink. 40%. Look at the colors that Photoshop has to calculate in order to transition to full green if I'm painting in a low opacity. It has to create a lavender. So if you look at the, you know, a color chart, color wheel, Photoshop has the burden of taking the calculation of, okay, well, if it's pink and I want to get to that mint green, what's the next step in color that I have to get to in order to transition to that? A lot of people see like see those transitions between super bright colors and they look kind of dull. And they kind of have to be, because Photoshop has to do that calculation from one super bright color, maybe all around the horn, to the next, and in between there are dull colors. So if your client is upset that that's happening, keep that in mind, because I've had that happen a lot of times. They go, why is that so dull? And I have to respond that, well, between this color and that color, there has to be some kind of transition if you're using a gradient, and that's going to be usually a dull color. So just a little color theory sidebar. Okay, I'm going to work a little bit more. Now, I feel like these, the darks in the image are too strong, so I want to clip the blacks. And an easy way to do that, you know, I'm going to put this in color, even though it is kind of primarily a luminosity move, but in selective color, you go into your blacks and you just clip the blacks down. Works really nicely. And I'm going to take, see it, I'm going to take some cyan out. Just takes the edge off. So okay, I'm going to stop tweaking the background right now. I like it. It's bright and fun, and I am going to show you now how to eliminate the bands from it in a really, really simple step. There are a lot of different methods that people out there teach for removing bands, and one of them is like working in 16-bit the whole time, which, you know, it's fine. If you really want a big ass file to work with all the time, be my guest, work in 16, because your gradients will be band free. But for me, I like being able to do all the stuff that can be done in 8-bit that can't be done in 16, all the processes, the filters, etc. And I also like having a much more manageable file size. So I don't care that when I work in 8, I'm fine doing all the gradients that I want, because I know at the end I'm just going to run a quick process and eliminate them with just one action that I have. I'll show you what I'm talking about with the banding. I'll bring up a Viz layer, solar curve, whatever you want to call it. So we've got a bunch of bands in here. You know, they're not too bad. They're surprisingly good here. But still we can eliminate them completely. So there are these transitions between the colors, right? It just happens in every file that has gradients, because there's no dithering going on. And you know, you can hammer these with grain, but I've got this cool method that I just run with a touch of a button, and it works nice. It adds a little bit of grain, not a ton, but it totally eliminates the bands. I call it destroy bands. I'm just going to run it and show you how it works. There you go. Adds a nice tooth. Let's do before and after. You can see bands if you kind of move the image around, especially over here. Well, maybe not so much. But yeah, it's a little bit of tooth, gets rid of the bands. Basically what this action does is it adds noise to your image, then it takes it into Camera Raw, it strips the noise out, and then it takes it back into Camera Raw and adds a little bit more noise. The beautiful thing that I've found is that when Camera Raw does its noise reduction filter and then exports back into 8-bit from the RAW module, the dithering that it introduces is, you know, very similar to what you would see as a result from a 16 to 8-bit conversion. Oh yes, and in your files, one last point about grads and bands. Always preview, always proof for bands at 100%, because if you're at a lower zoom ratio, Photoshop will introduce bands lots of times, maybe even clients will look at a file and they'll go, whoa, dude, you got so many bands in here. What are you, a hack? Just make sure you ask them, were you viewing that 100% in Photoshop? Because that's the only way to truly check for banding. You know, one last step, I'm just going to crank up. It's a little ham-fisted, but I think it's going to look, I'm just going to crank up the hue saturation just a touch. And I'm going to add some punch here. I'm going to merge everything up. You could do merge visible too. And I'm going to run my big high pass action. Play. And it gives it a big old punch. And I'm going to back that off like down to 60 or something. Just gives it a bunch of snap. You know what? I'm going to do that selectively because I think that might be a little bit too much snap. I'm just going to fill the mask with black and just paint in. I just want a little bit more structure in the hair here, and that's going to provide it. Everything else is fine. Let's see what happens if I just take the blacks down just a bit more. You know where I want that to happen is in the shirt. So I'm going to bring up another selective color. Drop the blacks down. You can do this with a curve too. And I'm going to bring up grain layer to just see what some added tooth will look like. Yeah, right. I like it. Cool. I've got this really cool image that I really like. And the long road of pain of dealing with that hair has almost been forgotten by you know, the whole process of doing the color exploration and doing the color work. That's what I like to emphasize is if you can do the painful stuff up front and get it right, you're free to do whatever you want in terms of the creativity. And you're not getting bogged down by having, you know, crappy mistakes that you have to fix when your brain is in, you know, the creative butterfly mode. And I always try to do that with my images so I'm free to not have to worry about technical problems when I'm doing the stuff that really matters and is really fun. So keep that in mind. Set up your files really good right in the beginning so you're free to just create whatever you want.